Okay, welcome to my talk. My talk is Tools over Processes over People, or not. This is the second time I'm giving this talk, so I hope you'll bear with me if I stumble a little bit here and there, but it should be fine. So, who am I that I'm talking here about Agile? So, my name is Martijn van Kleijn. I work for a company called HCS Company here in Amsterdam. It's a consultancy firm. And by day, I'm a DevOps engineer or infrastructure engineer. So I usually don't give a lot of talks. So, but on occasion I do, and specifically on this topic. By night, I'm what I consider myself a FOSS developer. I have been for quite a long time. Usually tend to do smaller commits, smaller contributions to projects. And I used to do a lot in PHP world. Nowadays, I'm doing a little bit more in the Go world. And I've contributed to a number of projects like DEX, IDP, Concourse, and Testify. I have about 20 years of experience in Linux infrastructure in general. And I've worked with, I'm currently working with containers, Kubernetes, OpenStack, and for example, Ceph storage clusters. So, about 10 years of experience in Agile and DevOps. I say about 10 years because, well, roughly 10 years ago, DevOps did not really exist as a terminology. But the way we were working at the time was very similar. Oh. So, I've been in different teams with many different levels of Agile understanding. And this talk is going to be a part personal talk, especially the first part, and the second half of the talk is a little bit more on the advice side. So I'm hoping you'll see that. Right, so hopefully some of you have seen this movie. Everything is awesome. I will take you back a couple of years when I was part of a small, well-oiled, highly performant, agile DevOps team. Or so we thought. We had it all. We had a backlog, we had a product owner, we had sprints, and we had speed to react to customer desires. Right? Things couldn't get more agile. Everything was fine, until it all came crashing down hard. So, one of our team members left. He went on to do to better places, as we say. Our product owner burned out. The pressure on our team grew from other teams because our team was successful and we were getting more important in the organization. And then finally, I burned out. Suffice to say, tensions ran high, very, very high. The backlog was growing every day. We were struggling to keep the lights on and let alone churn out new features. So the entire team was balancing on a knife's edge. Our performance tanked. So, what happened? Well, we had a good start, but we didn't embed good practices, nor did we apply right sizing. I'm not sure if that means anything to you guys at this moment, but I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail. And of course, this caused a lot of stress and tensions when people left or people got sick. This was then compounded by the increased importance of our team within the organization, and therefore the pressure on our team was growing day by day. Not to mention the fact that we were increasingly dependent on other non-agile teams within the organization, specifically other infrastructure teams or the more classical stack machine teams. So basically we lost our screen, and we lost our focus, our goals, and our motivation. So assuming that, yeah, we have it back. So did our team survive? Well, actually, yes. But then the question is, how did we survive? Well, we had what I would like to call a big reset. We redefined our values and goals as a team, and that's really very, very important to what we did. We looked each other basically deep in the eyes, we smiled, and we said, okay, let's have bygones be bygones, and we'll try to work together on our core values. That lowered tensions in the team and resolved the differences that we were having within the team and between team members. Basically, we started watching each other's backs, and if we thought somebody was very stressed out, we would say, relax, take a seat, take a break. So what we also did was we explored or re-explored, there it goes again. We explored or re-explored the meaning of both Agile and DevOps in our opinions. There's many, many different opinions about what is Agile and what is DevOps, especially the Agile part. So that's what we did. What does it mean for us as a team? So we discussed and adapted our way of working over the course of many months. It literally took something like 9 or 10 months for us to start functioning better in a new way of working, to fix the problems that we were having. So basically it was very tough, but it worked, unlike the screen. So that's very difficult to do, but it's very important, especially if you're having a lot of stress and problems within the team. As a short reminder, I want to give you a rundown what the Agile Manifesto is. So the high-level points, just as a reminder. So it's individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And responding to change over following a plan. So these are the 4 big highlights of Agile, or the Agile Manifesto. There are other points, but these are the 4 big ones. Please keep in mind that what's on the left is more important than what's on the right. That doesn't mean that the stuff on the right is what you can forget about. It's still important to have documentation. It's still important to have a plan and have processes. If you have to choose, for whatever reason, focus on the left. However, for me at least, it's about more than just a manifesto. Agile for me is also about how you keep your team and your organization amped up. Like, keep them enthusiastic. This, by the way, is a very nice screenshot made by AI. As such, while there are many things related to Agile, a big one in my experience is motivation. So I want to focus a little bit more on motivation. So way back in 2009, Dan Pink did a TED Talk. I hope you know what TED Talks are. He did a TED Talk in 2009 called The Puzzle of Motivation. In it, he defined intrinsic motivation as the desire to do things because they matter, because we like it, because they're interesting, or part of something important. So his talk got well over 30 million views by now. I highly recommend that you take a look at that talk, especially the latter part of the talk is very interesting. And in his talk, he mentions 3 important things, which I hope I can show you. First one, autonomy. Autonomy is the urge to direct our own lives. I'm sure everybody here has felt at some point that they were being directed in a course or a direction that they didn't really want to go. And autonomy basically says everybody wants to have control. Mastery. So mastery is the desire to get better and better at something that matters. I mean, if you do a job and you don't feel like your job is actually contributing to something, it doesn't really matter, then why would you spend the time and the energy to become better at that? Most people want to get better and better at something that matters. And then purpose. The yearning to do what we do in the service of something larger than ourselves. Basically, it means that if you have a small local job or local, how do you say that? Local company, but you are very, very important within that organization because of what you do, or your organization is doing something crucial like helping out kids in need or something like that, then you automatically find yourself more motivated because you have a big purpose. You have a clear purpose. So, next, I will go into some advice. However, before I go into some of the things you can do to help you in your Agile adventures, I would like to see if you recognize some of these situations that we find in organizations. So, one of them, you're doing Agile. You shouldn't do Agile, you should be Agile, right? So, you're doing Agile, but you're Agile in name only. Following the book, anybody recognize that one? Somebody in an organization read a book about Agile or DevOps, and they started on page 1, and then implemented every line in the book in the organization, and now your organization is Agile. The DevOps department. Anybody recognize that one? Yeah. So I was at a talk by Jess Humble. Not like that. And Jess Humble is one of the DevOps gurus, and he did an amazing talk. And at the end of his talk, he gave some well-intentioned advice. He said, whatever you do, don't create a DevOps department. And then I think it was like 15 minutes later, a DevOps department was created. So I was like, what is this? This can't happen. And then the Lone Agile team. Maybe some of you recognize this one. Basically, you have a team that decided that they want to be Agile. The organization doesn't want to be agile, doesn't understand what agile is. However, the team manages to become an agile team, but they stay the only team in the organization. Or, finally, you didn't even start agile or DevOps. Maybe you heard about it, but you didn't even start it. So, let me try to give you some high-level advice, and then I'll step into the specific topics of team building, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, one by one. So, next. General advice, get strong Scrum Masters. Get strong Agile coaches. By strong, I don't mean physically strong. I mean people who don't mind talking to management, don't mind defending the Agile values, are willing to go all the way up and down the organization to explain what is Agile, what does it mean, how does it work. That's very crucial in your organization. And preferably they're working together to do that. Like I said, apply and explain Agile and DevOps practices throughout the entire organization. Don't do that in one department, don't do that in one team. Depending on the way your organization is structured, you might do it in part of an organization, but try to do it in your entire organization. The smaller your organization, the easier it is. But if you have a big organization, one of them I stayed at was like 10,000 people, that's going to be more difficult. However, don't be afraid to restructure the organization if you need to, right? Discuss it with management, get management on board, restructure organization if needed. So, team building. An important thing is, or in my opinion, is fund service and product teams. Don't fund projects. You don't want to end up in a situation where you have where you're running a project with an agile team. It takes a year or something, or maybe even 2 years, to finish the entire project, and then your team is disbanded. Who the hell is going to maintain it? The people who wrote it are gone. Apply just right sizing. So this is sometimes also referred to as the 2 pizza rule. Now you can debate about how many pizzas people eat. I myself eat a little bit more. But generally speaking, what it means is try to have teams sized from 4 to 6 people. An absolute maximum is 10 in one team. And the reason for that absolute maximum of 10 is, and basically, any meeting that you have, any discussion you have will be a lot more complicated. You will have a lot more opinions, and it will take a lot more time. So, about the right size, 4 to 6 people. As a team, make sure you define your values and your goals. That doesn't mean just the goal in terms of your project or your product or service. It also means how do we want to behave as a team? How do we cooperate together? What does it mean? Can anybody speak their minds? Do they need to raise up their hands before they ask something? Or are we going to, and please don't do this, are we going to burn down everybody who has a different opinion than us? And then finally, make sure to build up trust and communication. This takes usually about 3 months, probably longer, if you have a true team. That's why I also recommend try to keep your team together for at least a year. I've seen organizations where people come into a team and then 2 months later, half of the team leaves again. So you have a lot of flow through. Try to keep your teams together for at least a year. So, next, autonomy. Oh, yeah. Please, don't micromanage. It's sometimes tempting, especially for management or team leads, to micromanage the teams. If you have a bunch of engineers that know what they're doing, make sure you trust your engineers. You don't need to micromanage them, usually. You can always help direct them, but don't micromanage. Make sure to, as a team, to build up trust with your product owner and your customers. Your product owner is the one that's representing your team towards your customers. So if he or she can trust what you're doing and knows what you're doing and what you're capable of, it's much easier to discuss which kind of features you need to do with your customers. And above all, take the autonomy as a team. Make sure you take it, because nobody's going to hand it over to you, usually. Just take it. That also means take the responsibility that goes with it. If you want to have full autonomy when you're developing your project, that's fine. But once it goes live, don't shirk the responsibility of fixing bugs and providing support. So mastery. This one is an interesting one because many people interpret that in different ways. But making mistakes is natural and useful. So don't punish mistakes. Instead, learn from the mistakes. Be open and transparent about mistakes. That's a good way to build trust through, for example, postmortems. If you write detailed postmortems describing what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and what are we going to do to fix it, and you provide that information to your customers as well and the rest of the organization publicly and transparently, people will trust you more. Also, continuously improve. Don't say, oh, we're done. There's always something that needs to be improved. In Japanese, they call that Kaizen. Look it up. It's a very interesting concept. And make room for skill improvement. That's a little bit of a no-brainer, but if people don't improve their skills, then basically in 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years, IT goes fast, your people will have less skills to actually do their daily jobs. And don't be afraid to change the roadmap, right? That sounds a little bit scary, especially if you're a product owner or something, but just be aware of the promises that you made to your customers. If you have a good enough reason to change the roadmap, it's fine. Your customer trusts you, it will be fine. Then, purpose. So, how to create a clear and effective purpose. This is a little bit difficult sometimes for organizations. I've known organizations that had highly detailed visions at a high level. And I've known organizations that have basically no vision at a high level. Whatever you do, make sure that you define a vision at every level. Start with a high-level vision and break that vision down towards visions for your team in the end. Based on that vision, you can define team goals. This is very important. Because if you don't have clear team goals, you don't know what you're working towards. Then, together with your PO, identify your customers. Sometimes it turns out that the customer that you think you have is not actually your customer. It's maybe somebody who also uses your product or service, but it's not your main customer. So don't be afraid to identify your customers, even if you think you already know them. Then define a team API. Basically, that means what goes in, what comes out, how does it go in, how does it come out, right? That's important. And then finally, Agile is a mindset, right? Did you notice that during my entire talk, I did not once talk about tools at all? And that's on purpose. Tools should be there to help you, but not hinder you. They should adapt to you. The tools are there for you, and then the process, but definitely you should not be adapting to the tools. That's because Agile is a mindset. It's hard. It's about working together with respect and dignity. It's about working in a structured manner. And it's about blank screens. Learning and adapting constantly, right? That's in essence what I want to bring across to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to post them now or walk downstairs. Come here to talk. So, any questions? Comments? Yeah?
Yeah, so you talked a bit about in the beginning, you had a big reset with your team.
Yeah.
And then you gave us some learnings. But how did you actually implement them for your team? So how did you make that switch?
Make the changes, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that basically in a very gradual way. So I talked about continuous improvement as well. So we basically started at what was the biggest problem that we were having, which was interference from other teams. So we defined our team API to make sure that we got requests in a structured manner so we could handle them easier. And of course, we also had our product owner that was missing. So basically, we rolled a D20 and we decided, okay, you're the product owner. And that person temporarily became product owner. So, but again, step by step, biggest problem first, and then you go to your smaller problems. Another question.
Hi. By the way, great talk. You said it's your first one, if I remember correctly, but it was really good. So
thank you.
You can make a second one. Can you go back to the slide about the agile values and let's say, basically, for example, prefer working code compared to comparative documentation?
The agile manifesto.
Second slide, maybe. Well, sorry, not slide, like first page, I guess.
That one.
Yes. I feel like basically some of the parts on the left, which are, let's say, the parts that some of the parts that the Agile Manifesto tries to prioritize, might be a little bit in conflict / in contrast with, for example, SRE or even more generally DevOps, right? Because basically, like, imagine that you want to, support an application as an SRE engineer, but you don't work with the application itself on a daily basis, right? So to really be on call and be effective, you really do need compressive documentation more than, let's say, code that you can navigate and look at every time you need to, basically solve a problem. Same for processes and tools. Like that's the whole reason why you automate, right? Because you try to kind of get people out of the equation to, for speed, reproducibility, reliability, auditing, like all that kind of stuff. And like I feel like there's a little bit of tension between, let's say, some of these aspects and let's say agile values. So, but they're both, let's say, practices that are like very much endorsed and appreciated by tech teams nowadays. So. How do these practices kind of come together, and how do, let's say, they work together, given that they have a little bit of like different incentives, and also they kind of contrast each other on the way to go about certain challenges? Yeah.
So I don't really see them as conflicting. The one is more important than the other in Agile, but we're talking here about Agile within the team, right? So you have a product team or service team that is supporting the product. And of course, they write documentation. It's very necessary for example, SRE purposes, that they write clear documentation. But it doesn't mean that the fact that they're working on the software and trying to provide working software doesn't mean that they don't write any documentation. It doesn't mean that they don't use any process or any tools. It's perfectly fine to use automation to automate the heck out of everything. I mean, we were, at one point, I was in a part of a team where we had 3 people managing a build pipeline system where we went from hardware to basically everything that was running on top of it, and we had about 10,000 customers. 3 people. And we also provided support. How did we do that? Basically by a shit ton of tools, automation, processes, proper documentation. These points in the manifesto are basically, this is considered more important than the other part. Then the left side is considered more important than the right side, simply because we want to promote people talking to each other, right? If you, in your SRE situation, have a problem with the application, and it's something that's a little bit unclear, and it's not documented, it's easier to talk to somebody, and then you adjust the documentation, right? That's the idea. So I don't see it as being in conflict. I see it as working together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Basically, I think that it all hinges on, let's say, like making sure that, let's say, the practices on the left are kind of well balanced with the stuff on the right, like that you do it correctly, not that, for example, you take the left and just disregard the right, because in that case,
definitely don't disregard stuff on the right. That's definitely not the intention of this slide. Yeah. It's just, if you have to make a choice because you're stressed out or whatever you do, the stuff on the left is about people, about interactions, and that's more important in principle than the stuff on the right. You can make a very nice detailed documentation on your product, but if there's nobody supporting it because they're all burned out, it doesn't matter. If you write documentation on your product, but your product does something that it's not supposed to do because you didn't talk to your customer, it's no use, right? That's the intention.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Martijn.
Yep.
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.